Have you ever met someone who seemed perfectly harmless at first, but something in your gut whispered, something's off? Maybe it took weeks, months, or even years before the truth showed up. And when it finally did, you look back and realize the signs were there the whole time. Today, we're talking about 7 personality types that can quietly sabotage your peace, your confidence, even your sense of direction without you noticing until it's too late. This isn't about judging people or labeling them. It's about recognizing patterns in human behavior that have existed for centuries. And once you see these patterns clearly, you can protect your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being from those who thrive on confusion, guilt, or chaos. If you clicked this video because you felt like someone in your life might fit one of these descriptions, you made the right decision. Let's break them down, one by one, so you can move through life with clearer eyes and stronger boundaries. You know, throughout my life, whether building companies, working with thousands of people, or just navigating friendships and family, I've observed something fascinating. Human behavior follows patterns. Not rigid rules, mind you, but recognizable rhythms that repeat across cultures, generations, and circumstances. And while every person is unique and complex, there are certain personality types that show up again and again, types that demand our attention, not because they're evil, but because they operate in ways that can drain us, confuse us, or slowly erode our sense of self. I'm not talking about people having a bad day or going through a rough patch. We all stumble. We all have moments where we're not our best selves. What I'm talking about are persistent patterns, ways of being that become someone's default mode of relating to the world and the people in it. Understanding these patterns isn't about becoming cynical or closing your heart. It's about seeing clearly. And clarity, especially as we get older and our time becomes more precious, is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves. So let's start with the first type, someone I call the perpetual victim. This is a person for whom nothing is ever their responsibility. Everything that happens to them, the job they lost, the relationships that fell apart, the opportunities that slipped away, it's all because of external forces. Bad luck, other people's cruelty, cosmic injustice. They have an explanation for every failure, every disappointment, and in every single explanation, they come out blameless. Now, let me be clear. Life absolutely brings genuine hardship. All of us experience loss, betrayal, unexpected challenges. That's just reality. But the perpetual victim has turned suffering into their identity. They wear their wounds like badges of honor. Their entire sense of self is built around being wronged, being misunderstood, being unfairly treated. And here's the thing that makes this pattern so difficult. You cannot trust such a person, not because they're malicious, but because they will eventually cast you in the role of oppressor. It's inevitable. Their psychology requires an enemy, someone to blame for their suffering. At first, you might be the savior, the one who finally understands them, the one who will treat them right. You might feel genuinely helpful, even noble, supporting them through their struggles. But given enough time, you will do something, perhaps something quite small and innocuous, that they will interpret as betrayal or abandonment. And suddenly, without warning, you become just another person who hurt them, just another chapter in their endless story of victimization. Here's why this matters. The perpetual victim cannot take responsibility. And someone who cannot take responsibility cannot be trusted with your heart, your time, or your energy. Why? Because they cannot see their own role in creating their circumstances. They cannot recognize how their own patterns, their own choices, their own interpretations contribute to the difficulties they face. If they cannot see their part in past problems, how can you trust them to behave differently in the future? I remember working with someone years ago who told me, with an almost proud tone, that every business partner had cheated him, every colleague had undermined him, every friend had eventually betrayed him. As he spoke, I noticed something strange. He seemed to find validation in this narrative, as if his life of betrayals proved something noble about his character struggling in a cruel world. So I asked him a simple question. In all these situations, did you ever consider your own part in attracting or creating these outcomes? The look on his face, It was as if I'd insulted his entire existence. The question was unbearable because it threatened the very foundation of his identity. And that's the trap. The perpetual victim doesn't want solutions. Solutions would threaten their identity. What they want is validation, someone to agree that the world is cruel and they are its innocent target. They will drain your compassion, your energy, your resources, and it will never be enough. Before long, the victim makes you question your own intentions. But the next personality type doesn't wait for emotional influence, they engineer it. This brings us to what I call the subtle manipulator. This type is harder to identify at first because manipulators are often charming, attentive, and remarkably skilled at reading people. They don't use direct force. Instead, they rely on emotional pressure, guilt, and your desire to be liked or needed. For them, every relationship is a game to be won, every interaction a move to gain some advantage, and often it's so habitual they don't even realize they're doing it. Think about how you feel around certain people. Do you often feel guilty without quite knowing why? Do you end up doing things you didn't really want to do, but somehow you couldn't say no? Manipulators are masters at knowing which emotional buttons to push. They might say things like, don't worry about me, I'll be fine alone, with just the right tone that makes you feel terrible if you don't drop everything to help them. Or they'll remind you of past favors they've done, subtly creating a sense of obligation that makes it nearly impossible to refuse their current request. You can't trust a manipulator because their relationships are built on hidden agendas. Their kindness always comes with strings attached. Every favor carries an invisible price tag. I once knew someone, let's call her Sarah, who had this remarkable ability to make you feel grateful for helping her. She never asked directly. She would sigh, mention how overwhelmed she was, how difficult things were getting, and before you knew it, you were solving her problems while she smiled and thanked you profusely. It felt good in the moment, like you were being a good friend. But over time, you'd realize the relationship was entirely one-directional. When you needed support, she was somehow always too busy, too stressed, too wrapped up in her own situation. The tragedy of the manipulator is that they never form genuine connections. They're always performing, always calculating, always maintaining control. They might be surrounded by people, but they're fundamentally alone because no one really knows them. And the people around them eventually realize they've been cast in a role rather than invited into a real relationship. Here's what to watch for. Notice how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you feel energized and valued? Or do you feel confused, guilty, or slightly used? Your emotions are often the earliest warning system. Manipulators create an atmosphere where you question yourself, where somehow their needs always become the priority without them ever directly demanding it. Manipulators operate behind the scenes, but the next type stands proudly in the spotlight, utterly convinced they're the only one who sees the truth. I'm talking about the righteous crusader, someone who is absolutely certain they are right about everything. They've discovered the truth, whether it's a political ideology, a religious doctrine, a dietary philosophy, a moral code, and now they're on a mission to convert everyone else. Now, having convictions isn't the problem. Having passion for what you believe isn't the problem. I have strong convictions about many things. The problem is absolute certainty, the complete inability to entertain doubt, the total identification with a position. The righteous crusader doesn't hold beliefs. They are their beliefs. Any questioning of their position feels like a personal attack. These are dangerous people, not because they're violent or overtly aggressive, but because they're willing to sacrifice anything and anyone for their cause. Human relationships, compassion, even truth itself become secondary to the mission. They divide the world into binary categories: the enlightened and the unenlightened, the saved and the damned, the pure and the corrupt. And they place themselves naturally and firmly in the category of the righteous. You cannot trust the righteous crusader because they're fundamentally dishonest, even if they don't realize it. They're not interested in dialogue or understanding. They're interested in conversion. When they appear to listen to you, they're not really listening. They're waiting for their turn to speak, already formulating their counter-argument, already fitting what you say into their pre-existing framework. I've encountered many such people over the years, especially when discussing technology, the future, or different ways of thinking about problems. Some would come to conversations having already decided what the answer was, wanting only confirmation, not exploration. When I would suggest that perhaps there were multiple valid perspectives, that perhaps living with uncertainty and continued questioning was more honest than claiming absolute knowledge, they would become upset. I wasn't giving them what they wanted, which was total validation of their position. The righteous crusader is often driven by fear, fear of uncertainty, fear of the vast unknowability of existence, fear of their own doubts. They've constructed a rigid belief system to protect themselves from the discomfort of not knowing, and they cling to the system desperately because without it, they'd have to face an unsettling openness. Here's what you need to understand. They will eventually demand that you conform to their beliefs. There will come a point where your friendship, your relationship, your value in their eyes becomes conditional on your agreement with their worldview. And if you don't agree, you become the enemy, the obstacle to truth, the person leading others astray. That's not a relationship. That's a requirement. Certainty can blind people, but some aren't blinded, they're simply unconcerned with truth at all. This brings us to the habitual liar, someone for whom truth holds no real value. Now, this seems obvious, of course you shouldn't trust a liar, but it's often more subtle than it appears. Chronic liars aren't just people telling blatant falsehoods, they're those for whom reality is whatever serves their purpose in the moment. They don't lie about everything. In fact, they often tell enough truth to make their lies believable. That's what makes them so dangerous. They blend honesty and deception so skillfully that you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. What separates them from someone who occasionally lies, and let's be honest, most people have told a lie at some point, is their complete disconnection from truth as a principle. They feel no guilt, no discomfort when twisting reality. Lying becomes as natural as breathing, and over time, they may even start believing their own fabrications. Their identity shifts constantly, like a chameleon adapting to whatever environment they're in. You can't trust a chronic liar because their words have no stable foundation. Their identity shifts constantly, like a chameleon adapting to its surroundings. Without truth, there's no real self, and without a real self, there's no real relationship. All that's left is a performance, a shifting mask you can never see behind. I've encountered people like this in business negotiations, in partnerships, even in personal relationships. They'll tell you one story today and a completely different version tomorrow, and when you point out the inconsistency, they'll look at you with genuine confusion or even offense, as if you're the one misremembering. The disorienting thing about chronic liars is that they make you doubt your own perceptions. You start questioning whether you heard correctly, whether you remembered accurately, whether maybe you're the one who's confused. But here's the truth. You're not confused. Your instincts are picking up on something real. The problem is that when someone lies with such ease and consistency, it creates a kind of fog around them. You can't get a clear picture of who they actually are because they're constantly reshaping the narrative. And over time, this becomes exhausting. You realize you're expending enormous energy just trying to figure out what's real and what isn't. Lies distort reality, but the next type distorts relationships themselves, treating people as tools, not humans. Let me tell you about the user. This is someone who sees others purely as instruments for their own purposes. They're friendly and attentive when they need something, but distant or disappearing when they don't. Their affection is transactional. Their loyalty lasts exactly as long as you're useful to them. Now, all relationships involve some degree of mutual benefit that's natural and healthy. We help each other, we support each other, we exchange value, but the user takes this to an extreme that crosses an important line. They have no genuine interest in you as a person. They don't care about your well-being, your growth, your happiness, except insofar as these things might affect their ability to use you. The user is often quite skilled at making you feel special. When they need you, they can be incredibly attentive, complimentary, engaging. They know exactly how to make you feel valued and important. But notice what happens when they've gotten what they wanted from you, or when you're no longer in a position to provide them with something they need. Suddenly, they're unavailable. Your messages go unanswered. They're always too busy to meet, and if you do run into them, they're polite but distant, their eyes already scanning the room for someone more useful. I remember knowing someone years ago who had this extraordinary network of connections. He seemed to know everyone, and everyone seemed to like him. But I started noticing a pattern. He would attach himself to people who were successful or influential, cultivate their friendship intensively for a period, extract whatever benefit he could, introductions, opportunities, resources, and then move on to the next target. Those he'd used would later speak of him with this puzzled sense of hurt, unable to quite articulate what had happened, but feeling somehow diminished by the encounter. You cannot trust a user because their regard for you is entirely conditional. The moment you cease to be useful through a change in your circumstances, their circumstances, or simply because they've exhausted your utility, you will be discarded. And they will feel no guilt about this because to them, this is simply how relationships work. People are resources to be exploited, not souls to be cherished. The user represents a profound poverty of spirit. They move through life taking, consuming, extracting, but never truly connecting. They accumulate contacts, but have no friends. They may achieve material success, but they live in a desert of their own making, surrounded by people but utterly alone. And the saddest part is, they often don't even realize what they're missing because they've never experienced genuine connection. Some people take your energy, others try to take your confidence or your joy. This brings us to the envious underminer, someone who cannot bear your success or happiness. If they can't have what you have, they'd rather see it ruined. Now, envy is different from wanting something. It's not about desire for possession. It's about the desire to destroy what someone else has. This type often hides their envy behind concern, or what they call honest criticism. They'll point out flaws in your plans, predict failure, or downplay your achievements, all while claiming they're just being realistic or looking out for you. But pay attention to how you feel after spending time with them. You don't feel supported or encouraged. You feel smaller, doubtful, drained. The envious underminer is most dangerous when they're close to you because their envy is often unconscious. They may genuinely believe they care about you, but beneath that surface concern lies a wish that you would fail or fall back to their level. I once worked with someone whose colleague had this pattern. Every time my associate achieved something, a promotion, recognition for a project, even personal milestones, his colleague would create some kind of crisis that demanded immediate attention, pulling focus away from the achievement and back to drama. It took years before my associate realized what was happening. His colleague couldn't stand being outshined. The envy was never stated directly, but it manifested in timing that was too consistent to be coincidental. You can't trust the envious underminer because your light wounds them. Your success feels like their failure. Your happiness highlights their dissatisfaction. And wounded people often wound others in return, usually without even realizing they're doing it. They'll offer advice that subtly steers you away from opportunities. They'll introduce doubts at crucial moments. They'll celebrate your setbacks with a sympathy that feels just a little too satisfied. The tragedy here is that envy imprisons the person feeling it even more than it hurts their target. They're trapped in constant comparison, unable to experience genuine joy because someone else always has more, has achieved more, seems happier. It's an exhausting way to live, and unfortunately, they often try to pull others down into that exhaustion with them. Envy chips away at your progress slowly, but the next type tears everything down all at once. Meet the chaos generator, someone who seems to attract drama and crisis wherever they go. Their life is always in turmoil. There's always an emergency, always a disaster, always some terrible situation unfolding, and somehow they always manage to pull others into their chaos. Now, some people genuinely experience difficult circumstances. Life can be genuinely hard, and sometimes people face real crises through no fault of their own. But the chaos generator is different. For them, chaos is not an occasional visitor, it's a permanent resident. It's their natural state, their comfort zone, perhaps even their identity. The chaos generator creates drama because they're addicted to intensity. Calm feels like death to them. Peace feels like absence. They've become so accustomed to crisis that they literally don't know how to function without it. And so, when things start to settle down, when life begins to stabilize, they unconsciously create a new crisis. They pick a fight. They make an impulsive decision. They manufacture a problem where none existed. I remember someone who would call at all hours with urgent situations. The landlord was threatening eviction. The employer was treating her unfairly. Family members were betraying her. Health was failing. And she needed advice, support, help immediately. For a time, I tried to assist, thinking I was being helpful. But I began to notice something. No matter how one crisis was resolved, there was always a new one waiting. The moment one drama concluded, another began, as if she were following a script, moving from crisis to crisis with perfect regularity. These people are exhausting to be around because they're like a hurricane. Everything in their vicinity gets pulled into the storm. You think you're being helpful by assisting them with their latest crisis, but you're actually enabling their pattern. You're giving them the attention and intensity they crave, which only reinforces the behavior. The chaos generator cannot be trusted because they will inevitably pull you into their chaos. They will make their emergency your emergency. They will make their drama your drama, and your life, which perhaps was relatively peaceful and stable, will become turbulent and exhausting. Moreover, they cannot be relied upon for anything requiring stability or consistency. They cannot keep commitments because their life is too chaotic. They cannot be there for you in your times of need because they're always in crisis themselves. The relationship becomes entirely one-sided, with you constantly giving and them constantly taking. And when you finally try to establish boundaries or step back, they often create an even bigger crisis to pull you back in. Now that we've walked through these 7 types, you might be recognizing people in your own life. You might even be recognizing aspects of yourself, and that's okay. We all contain multitudes. We all play these roles at various times. The question isn't whether these tendencies exist in us, but whether we're conscious of them, whether we're trapped in these patterns, or whether we can see them and choose differently. So how do you recognize these patterns early before they cause significant damage to your peace of mind and well-being? First, trust your gut. Your instincts are remarkably accurate, even when your rational mind tries to explain away the warning signs. If something feels off about someone, even if you can't quite articulate why, pay attention to that feeling. It's usually picking up on subtle cues, inconsistencies in behavior, mismatches between words and actions, patterns that repeat. Second, watch for how you feel around certain people. Do you feel energized and valued, or drained and diminished? Do you leave conversations feeling clear and encouraged, or confused and guilty? Your emotional state after interactions is one of the most reliable indicators of whether someone is good for you or slowly eroding your well-being. Third, observe patterns over time. One instance of victim mentality doesn't make someone a perpetual victim. One manipulative moment doesn't make someone a chronic manipulator. But when you see the same behaviors repeating across different situations, different contexts, different relationships, that's a pattern worth noting. And patterns predict future behavior far more accurately than promises do. Fourth, pay attention to how people handle responsibility. Do they acknowledge their role in difficulties, or is it always someone else's fault? Do they learn from mistakes, or repeat them while blaming circumstances? Someone's relationship with responsibility tells you almost everything you need to know about whether you can trust them. And finally, notice how people treat others, especially those who can't offer them anything. How someone treats a waiter, a subordinate, a stranger who's in their way, that reveals character more reliably than how they treat you when they want something from you. But recognizing these patterns is only half the equation. The other half is protecting your peace without becoming bitter or cynical. And this is where wisdom really comes in. You can maintain compassion without sacrificing self-respect. You can understand someone's pain without accepting their dysfunction into your life. You can wish someone well from a distance. These aren't contradictions, they're mature responses to complex human realities. Here's what I've learned. You cannot fix someone who is determined to repeat harmful patterns. You just can't. No matter how much you care, no matter how much you sacrifice, No matter how patient you are, if someone isn't willing to see their own patterns and take responsibility for changing them, your efforts will be futile. And more than futile, they'll drain you. Safeguarding your peace isn't selfishness, it's wisdom. As we get older, our time and energy become more precious. We've lived enough life to know that we won't be here forever, that our days are numbered, that how we spend them matters profoundly. Giving your limited time and energy to people who drain rather than nourish you isn't noble, it's wasteful. And it doesn't even help them, because often we're just enabling patterns that need to be broken, not accommodated. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you hate someone or judge them as worthless. It means you recognize that not everyone gets unlimited access to your heart, your time, your energy. Some people can be in your life in limited ways. Some people you can care about from a distance. And some people you need to release entirely, not out of anger, but out of clarity about what's healthy for you. I think a lot of us, especially as we've been taught to be kind and compassionate, confuse boundaries with coldness, but they're not the same thing. Boundaries are actually an expression of self-respect and honesty. When you set a boundary, you're being truthful about your limits. You're acknowledging that you're a human being with finite resources, not an infinite well that others can draw from endlessly. And that honesty is actually more compassionate in the long run than pretending you're fine when you're not, then eventually exploding or withdrawing completely. So as you reflect on the relationships in your life, I want you to do so without guilt. If you recognize that someone has been draining you, manipulating you, undermining you, or pulling you into chaos, acknowledging that truth isn't mean, it's clear-sighted. And clarity is perhaps the most compassionate thing you can offer both to yourself and ultimately to others. Because when you stop enabling dysfunction, you create space for people to potentially face their patterns and grow. Not guaranteed, but possible. Whereas continuing to accommodate dysfunction guarantees nothing changes. The goal here isn't to become suspicious of everyone or to close your heart. The goal is to see clearly, to recognize patterns, and to make conscious choices about who gets your precious time and energy. There are wonderful people in the world, people of integrity, honesty, kindness, and genuine care. Don't let your experiences with difficult personality types make you miss the good ones, but do let those experiences teach you discernment. Let me quickly recap what we've covered. The perpetual victim who can't take responsibility and will eventually make you the villain. The subtle manipulator who uses charm and guilt to serve hidden agendas. The righteous crusader who demands you conform to their absolute certainty. The habitual liar whose words have no stable foundation. The user who treats people as instruments, not souls. The envious underminer who can't bear your success. And the chaos generator who pulls everyone into their endless drama. 7 patterns. 7 ways that people, often unconsciously, create dysfunction in relationships. Recognizing them doesn't make you judgmental, it makes you wise. And acting on that recognition doesn't make you cold, it makes you self-respecting. The real purpose of this entire discussion is simple: to help you protect your peace, preserve your energy, and invest your time in relationships that nourish rather than deplete you. Life is too short and too precious to spend it navigating other people's endless dysfunction. You deserve clarity, you deserve peace, you deserve relationships built on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine care. Before you go, I want to speak to you directly. If this conversation helped you understand people in your life a little more clearly, or if it gave you even one insight you didn't have before, then consider hitting like, subscribing, and leaving a comment below. Tell me which of these 7 types you've encountered and how it changed your perspective. Your experiences might help someone else who needs to hear them. And if you'd like more videos like this, make sure you don't miss what comes next. Remember, clarity is not judgment, it's protection. And protecting your peace is one of the wisest things you can do. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself. Most people think body language is about confidence, but the truth is it's about connection. You can have all the right words, but if your body says the opposite, people won't believe you. In a world where everyone's trying to talk louder, the rarest signal isn't volume, it's alignment. When your movements, tone, and energy line up with what you truly feel, people trust you instantly. They feel drawn to you without knowing why. That's what makes your body language more attractive than more than 99% of people, not tricks, but congruence. And once you understand how it works, you can change how people see you in seconds. Before any word leaves your mouth, your body has already spoken. Every muscle, every breath, every tiny shift in posture is transmitting information. Think about it like this. We're all walking radio towers, constantly broadcasting signals. Some of those signals say, I'm open, I'm trustworthy, I'm here with you. Others say, I'm anxious, I'm hiding something, stay away. And here's the fascinating part, most of us have no idea what we're broadcasting. I've spent a lot of time thinking about human communication, especially in environments where the stakes are high. Whether you're pitching an idea, meeting someone new, or just having a conversation with a neighbor, the body delivers the first impression, and that impression happens faster than conscious thought. Studies show that humans make judgments about trustworthiness, competence, and warmth in fractions of a second, often before a single syllable is spoken. Your brain is constantly scanning other people for clues. Are they a threat? Are they a friend? Can I relax around them? So the first step isn't learning new movements, it's removing the signals that block your natural confidence. Because here's what most people don't realize. You're already capable of powerful, magnetic body language. You've had it your whole life. You just learned to suppress it. When we were kids, we didn't think about how to stand or where to put our hands. We ran, we laughed, we gestured wildly when we got excited. We leaned in close to people we loved. Our bodies were expressive, fluid, open. But then something happened. We grew up, we got hurt, we learned to protect ourselves, and slowly, almost invisibly, our bodies started closing off. This is what I call the hidden defensive reflex. It's an instinctive habit hardwired into us by evolution. Thousands of years ago, if you sensed danger, a predator, a rival, a threat, your body would automatically move to protect your most vulnerable areas. You'd hunch your shoulders to guard your throat. You'd cross your arms to shield your chest. You'd tense your jaw, lower your gaze, make yourself smaller. All of this happened without thinking, because your survival depended on it. The problem is that we still do this today, even when there's no real danger. You're not facing a predator when you walk into a coffee shop or sit down at a family dinner. But your body doesn't always know that. Social discomfort triggers the same ancient circuits. A stranger's glance, an awkward silence, the fear of being judged, these can all activate your defensive reflex. And before you know it, you're standing there with your arms crossed, your shoulders tight, your chin tucked down, sending out a signal that says, I'm not safe, I'm not confident, stay away. And here's the really tricky part. The more you close off, the more anxious you feel. It's a feedback loop. Your body tells your brain, we're in danger. And your brain responds by making you more vigilant, more tense, more defensive. You end up stuck in a cycle that keeps you looking and feeling less confident than you actually are. So how do you break that cycle? You reverse the signal. You consciously open up your body, even when it feels uncomfortable at first. You uncross your arms. You roll your shoulders back. You lift your chin. You turn your palms outward instead of hiding them in your pockets. These small adjustments send a completely different message to your brain. They say, we're safe, we're relaxed, we can engage. This isn't just psychology, it's physiology. When you open up your chest and lengthen your spine, you literally allow yourself to breathe more deeply. That deeper breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for calming you down. Your heart rate slows, your cortisol levels drop. You start to feel more grounded, more present, more like yourself. And when you feel that way, other people sense it immediately. I remember years ago, early in my career, I was preparing for a presentation that felt enormous at the time. I was nervous, maybe more nervous than I wanted to admit. And I noticed something. Every time I thought about the presentation, my shoulders would creep up toward my ears. My arms would cross over my chest. I'd find myself hunched over my desk, tight and tense. And the tighter I got, the worse I felt. So I tried something simple. I stood up. I stretched my arms wide. I took a few deep breaths, filling my lungs all the way. I shook out my hands, and almost immediately, I felt different. Not invincible, not fearless, but calmer. More like someone who could handle what was coming. That small shift in my body changed the whole tone of my internal experience. And when I finally gave that presentation, people told me afterward that I seemed relaxed and confident. The truth is, I wasn't faking confidence. I was just letting my body remember what safety feels like. This brings me to one of the most powerful principles I've learned about body language. Vulnerability is magnetism. Most people think the opposite. They think strength means hiding weakness, locking down emotions, never letting anyone see you sweat. But that's not how trust works. Trust is built when people sense that you're real, that you're human, that you're not performing some rehearsed version of yourself. When you reveal your vitals, your throat, your chest, the soft inner part of your arms, you're doing something that most people are too afraid to do. You're signaling, I trust this moment, I trust you, I have nothing to hide. And that kind of openness is incredibly rare. It's also incredibly attractive, not in a superficial way, but in a deeply human way. People want to be around others who make them feel safe, and you make them feel safe by being safe in your own skin. Think about the people you're most drawn to. Chances are, they're not the ones who stand rigid and guarded, arms crossed, face tight. They're the ones who lean in when they talk to you, who gesture freely, who smile easily, who look you in the eye without flinching. They're comfortable in their bodies, and that comfort is contagious. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. That sounds great in theory, but what about when my body just won't cooperate? What about when I'm sweating through my shirt, or my hands won't stop shaking, or my face turns red for no reason? This is where things get a little more complicated, because we're not just dealing with posture anymore. We're dealing with the autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system is the part of your body that runs on autopilot. It controls your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, your sweat glands, all the things you don't consciously think about. It has two main branches, the sympathetic nervous system, which activates your fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps you rest and digest. When you're anxious or excited, your sympathetic system kicks in. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your muscles tense up, and no amount of willpower can just turn that off. So, what do you do when your body betrays you? When you're standing there, trying to appear calm and confident, but your hands are trembling or your voice is shaking? Here's the counterintuitive answer. You stop fighting it. You acknowledge it. You own it out loud. This might sound strange, but it's one of the most effective techniques I've ever come across. Instead of silently panicking about the fact that you're nervous, you just say it. You say, I'm a little nervous right now, or I tend to fidget when I'm excited about something, or my hands are shaking, I think I had too much coffee. And almost every time, people respond with warmth and understanding. Because guess what? They've been there too. Everyone has. When you name what you're feeling, something remarkable happens. You short-circuit the fear loop. Your brain stops fighting the anxiety and starts accepting it. And once you accept it, it loses most of its power. You're no longer stuck in that cycle of, I'm nervous, and I'm nervous about being nervous, and now I'm even more nervous. You're just nervous, and that's okay. It's human, it's real. I've seen this play out in so many situations. A friend of mine once had to give a toast at a wedding. Public speaking terrified him. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the microphone. But instead of trying to hide it, he opened with, I'm so nervous right now. I'm pretty sure my voice is going to crack halfway through this. The whole room laughed, not at him, but with him. And from that moment on, he was relaxed, he was genuine, and people loved him for it. That's the power of verbal ownership. It transforms a weakness into a strength. It shows that you're confident enough to be imperfect, secure enough to be vulnerable, and ironically, that makes you more attractive, more trustworthy, more human than someone who's trying desperately to look like they have it all together. Once you free your body from self-criticism, once you stop demanding perfection from your nervous system, you unlock something even more powerful: the ability to truly connect with another person through your eyes. Eye contact is one of the most misunderstood elements of body language. Most people think they're pretty good at it. But here's the reality. Most people only make decent eye contact when they're listening. The moment they start talking, they look away. Why does this happen? Because looking into someone's eyes while you speak feels vulnerable. It feels intense. Your brain wants to gather your thoughts by looking up or down or off to the side. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's natural. But when you do it too often, when you break eye contact every few seconds, the other person starts to disengage. They start to lose interest. Not because what you're saying isn't valuable, but because your body language is telling them, I'm not fully here. I'm not fully committed to this moment. Now contrast that with someone who holds your gaze while they speak. Someone who looks at you with steady, warm eye contact, who doesn't dart away every time they search for a word. That person commands attention. They make you feel seen, heard, valued, and they do it without saying a single extra word. I've studied people who are exceptional at this. Leaders, communicators, people who have this almost magnetic quality, and the common thread is that they've trained themselves to stay present with their eyes, even when it's uncomfortable. They've learned to hold eye contact just a little longer than most people do. Not in a creepy, staring way, but in a way that says, I'm here with you, I'm not distracted, you matter. This is a skill you can develop, and it doesn't take as long as you might think. The key is to start small. Next time you're having a conversation, challenge yourself to maintain eye contact for just a few seconds longer than feels comfortable while you're speaking. Not while you're listening, most people already do that, but while you're talking. You'll notice that at first, it feels awkward. Your brain will want to look away. But if you stay with it, if you breathe through that discomfort, something shifts. You start to realize that holding someone's gaze doesn't weaken your message. It strengthens it. And here's the beautiful part. When you hold eye contact while speaking, you're not just changing how the other person sees you, you're changing how you see yourself. You're training your nervous system to associate speaking with presence, with confidence, with connection. Over time, that becomes your default. You stop performing eye contact and start embodying it. It becomes part of who you are. But, and this is important, there's a paradox at the heart of all body language training. On one hand, you need to push yourself a little. You need to stretch beyond your comfort zone to practice things that feel awkward at first. That's how you grow. That's how you reprogram old habits. But on the other hand, if you approach this like a rigid checklist, like a set of rules you have to follow perfectly, you'll end up tight, tense, and performative. You'll be so focused on doing it right that you forget the whole point: connection. So how do you navigate that tension? How do you improve without becoming mechanical? The answer is simple, but profound. You treat body language not as a chore, but as an opportunity to feel good. You ask yourself, in any given moment, what would feel good right now? What would feel natural, authentic, alive? Because here's what I've noticed. The people who have the most captivating presence aren't the ones following a script. They're the ones who've learned to tune into their own bodies, to notice what feels expansive and what feels contracting, and then to move toward what feels good. They slouch when slouching feels right. They gesture wildly when the energy calls for it. They kick their feet up if that's what their body wants to do. And somehow, instead of looking sloppy or unprofessional, they come across as confident, authentic, magnetic. I think about actors who embody this. There's one in particular, you've probably seen him, who breaks almost every conventional rule of good body language. He slouches in interviews. He rolls his fingers absent-mindedly. He kicks his bare feet up on the desk. By all traditional standards, he should come across as disrespectful or unprofessional. But he doesn't. He radiates confidence. He holds attention effortlessly. Why? Because everything he does comes from a place of genuine comfort. He's not performing confidence. He's not trying to impress anyone. He's simply at ease in his own skin, and that ease is irresistible. When you watch him tell a story, even though his eye contact isn't perfect, even though he looks away sometimes to gather his thoughts, you stay engaged. You lean in, because you can feel that he's present, that he's enjoying himself, that he's sharing something real. That quality, that sense of being genuinely comfortable and alive in the moment, is worth more than 1,000 perfectly executed techniques. This is what I mean by practicing charisma as an opportunity to feel good. It's not about abandoning technique or ignoring everything we've talked about. It's about approaching those techniques from a different place. Instead of saying, I have to maintain eye contact because that's the rule, you say, I wonder what it would feel like to really look at this person while I speak. I wonder if that would deepen our connection. Instead of, I need to stop crossing my arms because it looks defensive, you ask, what would it feel like to open up my chest and breathe more deeply right now? When you frame it that way, you're not forcing yourself into a mold. You're exploring. You're experimenting. You're treating your body as a laboratory where you get to discover what works for you. And that spirit of curiosity, that playfulness, changes everything. It turns what could feel like a burden into something genuinely enjoyable. I've had to learn this lesson myself, over and over again. Early on, I used to think that being effective meant being serious, controlled, measured. I'd go into meetings or presentations with this mental checklist: stand up straight, make eye contact, don't fidget, speak clearly. And sometimes that worked fine, but other times I could feel myself getting tighter and tighter, more and more disconnected from what I actually wanted to say. I was so focused on the performance that I lost touch with the purpose. It wasn't until I started letting go, allowing myself to pace when I felt like pacing, to gesture broadly when I got excited, to laugh at myself when I stumbled over a word, that things really shifted. I stopped trying to be the person I thought I should be and started being the person I actually am. And people responded to that. Not because I suddenly had perfect body language, but because I was real. I was present, I was enjoying the conversation, and that enjoyment was contagious. This brings us to something I think about a lot, which is the nature of charisma itself. Most people misunderstand what charisma is. They think it's about dominance, about commanding a room, about making everyone pay attention to you. But that's not charisma. That's force. And force creates tension, not connection. Real charisma is about resonance. It's about bringing your internal state into alignment with your external expression so that people can feel who you really are. When there's a mismatch, when you're anxious inside but trying to project confidence outside, or when you're excited inside but holding yourself back outside, people sense that incongruence. They don't trust it, they don't know how to respond to it. But when your inside matches your outside, when there's coherence between what you feel and how you move and speak, people relax. They trust you. They want to be around you. This is why all the techniques we've talked about work. Revealing your vitals works because it aligns your body with an internal state of trust. Verbal ownership works because it aligns your words with your actual experience. Strong eye contact works because it aligns your attention with your intention to connect. None of these are tricks. They're ways of bringing yourself into coherence. And here's the profound part. When you're in that state of coherence, you don't just affect how others see you. You affect how they feel about themselves. Think about the last time you were around someone who was genuinely comfortable, genuinely present, genuinely at ease. How did you feel? Chances are you felt more relaxed too. You felt permission to be yourself. That's the gift of coherence. It creates a field of safety around you that allows others to drop their masks, to stop performing, to just be. This is especially important for those of us who are in the second or third chapters of our lives. If you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, you've accumulated decades of experience, wisdom, stories. You have so much to offer in conversations, in relationships, in community. But sometimes, and I've heard this from many people, you might feel invisible. You might feel like the world has stopped paying attention, like your voice doesn't carry the same weight it used to. And I want to tell you, that's not about your worth. That's often about the signals your body is sending. As we age, it's natural to become a little more cautious, a little more protective of our energy. We might sit further back in our chairs. We might hesitate before speaking. We might cross our arms more often, not because we're defensive, but because we're conserving energy, or we're cold, or we're just comfortable that way. But those small shifts can, over time, make us less visible to others. Not because we're less interesting, but because our body language is signaling, I'm not fully engaged, I'm holding back. The beautiful thing is that you can reverse this at any age. You can decide right now to start uncrossing your arms more often, to sit forward in your chair when someone is speaking, to gesture when you tell a story, to look people in the eye and hold that gaze for a moment longer, to touch someone's arm when you greet them, to hug instead of just waving. These small actions ripple outward. They change how people perceive you, yes, but more importantly, they change how you feel about yourself. They remind you that you're still here, still engaged, still part of the world. I think one of the most underrated aspects of attractive body language is touch-appropriate, warm, platonic touch. A hand on someone's shoulder when they say something funny. A hug, hello, instead of a formal handshake. A high five during a conversation. In our culture, especially as we get older, we tend to touch each other less and less. And that's a loss. Touch is one of the most direct ways we communicate safety, affection, connection. When you incorporate a little more touch into your interactions respectfully, of course, reading the other person's comfort, you dramatically increase your warmth and magnetism. But again, this all comes back to the central principle. Do these things because they feel good, not because you're checking a box. Hug someone because you're genuinely happy to see them. Gesture broadly because you're excited about what you're saying. Hold eye contact because you're genuinely curious about the person in front of you. When your actions are rooted in authentic feeling, they land differently. They feel true, and truth is always more attractive than performance. So here's what I want to offer you as a practical path forward. Don't try to overhaul your entire body language overnight. Don't walk around with a mental checklist of 20 things to remember. That will just make you self-conscious and stiff. Instead, commit to a simple daily experiment. Spend just 5 minutes each day consciously stretching your social comfort zone. 5 minutes. That's it. Maybe you spend those 5 minutes making eye contact with a cashier while you talk to them. Maybe you say hello to a stranger on your walk. Maybe you tell a story at dinner and really allow yourself to gesture, to use your hands, to get animated. Maybe you sit in a more open posture during a phone call, even though the other person can't see you, because remember, your body affects your mind, and your posture will change the tone of your voice. The key is that you're doing this consciously, deliberately, as an experiment. You're not expecting perfection. You're not judging yourself. You're just exploring. You're saying, I wonder what happens if I open up a little more today. I wonder how that feels. And then, after those 5 minutes, you let it go. You relax back into whatever interactions you're having. You stop monitoring yourself. You stop performing. You just live. Because here's the thing. Real transformation doesn't come from constant vigilance. It comes from small, consistent practices that gradually rewire your habits. Those 5 minutes of conscious expansion will, over time, become your new baseline. You won't have to think about it anymore. It'll just be who you are. I've seen this happen again and again. People who commit to tiny daily practices, just 5 minutes of stretching their comfort zone, report that within weeks, maybe a month or two, they feel completely different in social situations. They feel more confident, more visible, more connected, and people around them notice. Family members comment that they seem more vibrant. Strangers strike up conversations with them. Old friends reach out, wanting to reconnect. It's not magic. It's just the natural result of bringing your body into alignment with the person you've always been, underneath all those layers of protection. Remember, attractive body language isn't about becoming someone else. It's about removing the barriers that hide who you already are. You are already interesting. You already have warmth, humor, wisdom, stories worth telling. The goal isn't to manufacture charisma. The goal is to stop blocking it. And when you approach this work from that perspective, from a place of uncovering rather than constructing, from curiosity rather than criticism, the process becomes genuinely enjoyable. You start to rediscover parts of yourself that you'd forgotten. You start to feel more alive in your daily interactions. You start to notice that connection isn't something you have to chase or earn. It's something that happens naturally when you show up as yourself. So, let me bring this all together. Attractive body language isn't about control, it's about coherence. It's not about dominance, it's about resonance. When your inner world and your outer expression align, when what you feel and how you move are in harmony, people feel peace around you. They trust you. They remember you. They want to be around you. Not because you're performing some technique perfectly, but because you're real. And in a world where everyone is trying so hard to impress, to look good, to say the right thing, realness is the rarest and most magnetic form of energy on the planet. Don't aim to perform, aim to connect. Because connection, true human connection, is what we're all searching for. It's what makes life rich and meaningful, especially as we move into the later chapters. Every conversation is an opportunity. Every interaction is a chance to practice presence, openness, authenticity. And when you bring that quality to your daily life, you don't just change how others see you, you change the entire texture of your experience. You walk into a room and instead of wondering if you belong, you know you do. You speak and people listen, not because you've mastered some technique, but because you're speaking from a place of truth. You look someone in the eye and they feel seen. You tell a story and people lean in because they can feel your aliveness, your joy, your humanity. That's what attractive body language really is. It's the outward expression of a person who has decided to stop hiding, to stop shrinking, to stop playing small. It's the signal of someone who has chosen to be fully present in their own life. And that choice, that decision to show up as you truly are, is available to you right now, not tomorrow, not after you've practiced for months, right now, in this moment. So if this message has resonated with you, I'd invite you to do something simple. Take a moment to like this video. It tells the algorithm that you found something valuable here, and it helps this conversation reach more people who might need to hear it. Subscribe if you want more of these explorations, conversations that are objective, curious, rooted in self-mastery and human connection. And here's what I'm most curious about. Share your thoughts below. What's one small body language shift you'll practice today? Maybe it's uncrossing your arms during your next conversation. Maybe it's holding eye contact for just a few seconds longer. Maybe it's greeting someone with a hug instead of a wave. Whatever it is, write it down, commit to it, and then notice what happens. Let's build a space where confidence is quiet, real, and deeply human, where we're not trying to impress each other, but simply to see each other, because that's the world I want to live in. And I think it's the world you want to live in too. So let's create it. One conversation, one gesture, one moment of genuine presence at a time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for having the courage to show up as yourself.